Robinson Show, we were back with Kevin Horek.
How's it going?
Good, Kevin. How you doing?
I'm very well. Can't complain, you know?
Cool, cool. You're a chief design officer and a TV radio host and a published author, correct?
Wow.
That's correct. Yeah. It's been a fun journey.
It sounds it. How old are you? You don't seem.
I'm 35.
Okay, I was thinking like 20s, but that's quite accomplished. Quite accomplished.
Well, I appreciate it.
No problem. You're from Alberta, Canada, correct?
Yeah, I'm born and raised, lived here most of my life. I spent a bunch of time in LA in 2004 when I was 21, but other than that, I basically been here for my life for the most part.
That's
yeah.
what I was going to ask if you went back there because I saw. I think you went to school or something in LA, correct?
Yeah, I took some classes at UCLA for a time in 2004, which was actually really, really interesting and fun. I took like a corporate design course down there, and they had people kind of from all over different parts of the world, and you had an assignment and you had to print it off and bring it next class into like a lecture hall. There was no computers. You had to put your work up on the board, and everybody in the room had to go around and say to everybody's piece what they liked and didn't like and why. And it was really, really eye-opening. So it was a really good time.
Wow, that does sound crazy. What were you going to school for? Was it for the web design stuff?
Yeah, so I basically fell into it a little bit when I was 12 in grade school. They were kind of teaching us how to build little websites in computer class, and kind of just played with that on the evenings and weekends. And then my whole family's been in computers, so I kind of grew up with a computer since the 80s and the little Macs and stuff. And my dad came to me one day, and he just said to me, "Look, there's a course at the local tech college that basically has all the stuff you've been playing with. We should at least go to the info night." And I actually left high school a month early to go. Had to go back and write my final exams, and then just kind of been working in the industry ever since, really. And then just kind of, working at startups and marketing agencies and software companies and a handful of other kind of jobs. And it's been kind of a journey, I guess. Yeah.
Cool. I was going to ask, what was the first computer that got you hooked?
It was like the Apple II. My dad used to bring them home on the weekend and play with them. And I remember he worked for the government up here, and we got to use the internet like really early on. When they had access to it. You had to basically dial into work, but you had to do it after hours, and you could only do it for like a half hour. And then out to the internet, so it was kind of slow back in the early dial-up days.
Yes.
So that was kind of interesting. I remember playing black and white Stratego all the time on the Mac. And
our one guy, he's not in tonight, but I think that was the computer that got him in trouble, right? So
yeah, was he playing like the Oregon Trail or something
friend,
on it?
Pete, you call him Lamborghini. He got in trouble. I think he broke an Apple II into the school he went to, and he got like expelled or something. Yes. What what were you gonna say, Kev?
No. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask, in your opinion, what is the greatest advance in computers? Is it dial-up to cable? Is it like desktop to laptop? What, in your opinion, is the greatest advancement in computers?
I definitely think it was going from dial-up to high-speed cable internet. I remember those days, like Netscape Navigator Gold. That was such a good browser back in the day, So I think that.
I agree. I have to agree.
Kind of changed everything, right?
Yes.
Not saying the mobile or the iPhone or the BlackBerry didn't change everything, but just I think like those technologies wouldn't have been around if we didn't have the internet, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, yeah, the smartphones, the tablets are amazing, but yeah, just the amazing advance from dial-up to high-speed cable or whatever it is.
Could you imagine if we never got like high-speed cable and it was always dial-up and like you had to? We got this new phone. You can plug your Ethernet cable into it and you get on the internet.
Exactly. Right? So I just think that none of that stuff would be around if we never went to high-speed internet.
Yes, have to agree on that one. I have to agree 100% on that one. I want to ask too, Kev.
Sure,
with
sure.
designing stuff, you've worked for a lot of companies. You worked for BMW, Best Buy, Apple,
Yep.
and Adobe, and more. What has been one of your favorite and most accomplished projects you've worked on?
I think, to be fair, when I think the best projects I've ever worked on are really when you're working on a startup, right? Because it's cool, don't get me wrong, to do stuff for big brands, but a lot of times it's a project and you have guidelines and you basically need to stay in those guidelines and you have a time frame. But working on a startup from nothing and you're working with a team of people when you're literally designing the first elements of the whole app or web app or both, and then you're working with guys that are writing the first kind of lines of code and you're planning it out, and then you actually see that thing launch months or years later.
Yeah.
And then you keep iterating on it and you start getting customers and feedback and it evolves into something that you never thought it would become. That to me is the most rewarding.
Sounds like it, yeah, because you like it seems like it would be more stressful working for those big companies. Like you have to live up to a standard where you can make the standard when you're just on a startup.
Yeah, exactly, right. And a lot of times it sounds cool, and it is cool, but at the end of the day, working for a big brand is just like working for anybody else at some point, right? Like, yeah. Sure, the budget might be a bit bigger, but usually the timelines are shorter and they want something a lot cooler.
They want more they
right?
want more out of you. You got to
Exactly.
really stand up. Yeah. That's basically how they work. Yeah.
Yeah.
More out of you for less whatever. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I agree. That goes towards everything pretty much.
Yeah, well, and you don't have the creative freedom, right? Usually you don't have as much creative freedom.
Yeah. Yes.
So
exactly. That's great to hear. It's on every level. It's not on just entry level.
Exactly.
So it goes
it's
all the
different.
way up.
It's different problems, right?
Yeah. I always wondered I don't know too if you deal with it, Kevin, but I've heard people saying I've witnessed it, like working at different jobs. I've worked a bunch of different jobs, and the bosses,
Okay.
you ask them a question, they never have an answer. Like I always wondered, like they always have to look into it. I was wondering, like, does that go all the way up to like NASA and stuff? Like,
I gotta look into that.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm sure. Like a lot of times, there's the bigger the organization, the more people that have to approve everything, right? And sometimes working on a project, that they're like, okay, well, you have 3 months to do it. You're like, well, it's going to take 6 or 9 months just to get it internally approved, right?
oh,
So
yes.
a lot of times those projects just get delayed. So I think in a lot of cases, it can. A lot of red tape, right?
Yes, yeah, definitely. That's crazy, Kevin. I wanted to ask too. Your
Sure.
radio and TV show, Building the Future.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been doing that for?
Almost 4 years now. The radio version, anyway. TV's been 2 or almost 2.
And it's live in a ton of locations, correct?
They're all pre-recorded, but yeah, it airs on a handful of FM, digital, and podcasting network out of LA, and then obviously it goes up online. Kind of started it. Well, I did start it 100% to get over my fear of public speaking, to be honest with you.
Wow, that's amazing that you've gone that far with it too. Yeah, I was going to ask if you did it all yourself or if you had a team of people helping you, or how did that start?
No, well, it kind of came by accident. I actually got asked to be on somebody else's radio show, and I wasn't what they were looking for at the time. I just didn't have what they were looking for, and I basically been thinking about doing a podcast basically since podcasting became a thing. And I was really scared to publish anything online. Writing, I published my design work because you kind of have to as a designer. If you want to move up, you need to showcase your work. But I would never really write anything or post. Like I had blog posts that I'd written that I never published. Always wanted to do a podcast, and so I got asked to be on the show, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to take a shot at this. I wrote back to the lady, said, I'm not what you're looking for, but do you know if they're looking for anybody else to do a show? And she said, I don't know. pass you on to the station manager in Atlanta. And I basically set up a call with her, pitched her my idea. They were looking for a similar type show. Had to go through a little bit of media training, which was basically watch a handful of YouTube videos and, started recording shows, right? And the backstory to the whole thing is I spent a number of years, like I'm one of those people that just randomly adds people on LinkedIn. Some people love that. Some people hate that. I've had people like laugh at me for it, like to my face. I don't really care. It's LinkedIn for me has kind of gotten, I would say 90+% of the things I've gotten career wise. So for me, it's worked in my favor, but right. And so I started reaching out to some of those connections because I never really had a reason to reach out to them. But now I had this show and I reached out to them and say, hey, I'm going to be doing this show. I followed you for a long time. Love to have you as a guest. Some people I never heard back from. Some people said, yeah. And others said, no, thank you. But, and you guys know how hard and time consuming it can be to get people on the show. Yes. So just kind of started with that, right?
Yeah. I love that. That's an amazing story.
And then I evolved. I figured out, as you guys know, like this to me has kind of been a fun side project that I maybe transition it to full time at some point, or at least more. But it's just me. I do kind of everything. But I figured out a couple years ago to partner with kind of PR and marketing firms in big U.S. cities, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, and they send me their guests or their clients, which I have as guests, right? And so I don't really necessarily go out and find guests anymore. There's the odd person I still reach out to if I really want to have them on the show, but for the most part, I cut that out, right? Because you guys know it can be really, really time consuming. So that's been really good. And then they send me their top people or clients, right? That'll fit for the show. So that's one thing I recommend to people do if they can partner with companies that are, basically have the type of people that they want on the show. Saves you a ton of time.
I agree. Just I've noticed that too. Like the past season or so, like I used to go on Twitter and go on follow sprees and then reach out to people. But like you said, then out of the blue, we have had people following us that I don't have to do that as much anymore. It's amazing. It's amazing when you grow the show like that. I love that.
No, totally. Yeah, it's fun, right? Well, you guys know it's a blast talking to people kind of all over the world about their passions and why they do the things they do.
Exactly. And it's also, I say too to people, like I love giving people something to just forget their mundane, their everyday lives. Like you give them that little escape, and it's just great. It's great.
Totally, or inspire them to actually do their own thing, whatever that is, whether it's like pursue a hobby or start a business on the side or actually raise some money and quit their job and go for it, or whatever that is. Right?
We had a guest. We had a guest.
He's rewarding.
Yeah, we had a guest.
Sorry?
I'm sorry. We had a guest, Joe Pepe, on over the summer, and just after that, he got the bug and he started his own podcast. Like it was just great to see.
Totally.
Yes.
No, I think that's great, and I'm curious. I found the podcasting community to be super supportive, open. You could basically ask them anything and people will give you advice, their feedback, their thoughts. Like it's been a really amazing community to be a part of. I'm assuming you guys have found that as well?
For the most part, we do have people that kind of hate on us. I've stepped on some toes, but also like when you get to a certain we're at, when you get to a bigger level, like people come at you more. But I found that too for the most part. Like you said, a lot of people will come to me too, and I never shut them down. Like people ask about what boards we use, what microphones we have. Yeah, I love that. I do love that, and
it's always cool.
It's very cool. Very cool talking to people about that. Even people that have been. We've had people that have been broadcasting as long as we have, and they just ask how we do certain things with like Skype, getting it on, the show, and it's great. It's great to help somebody and feel like that you've made a difference in their show.
And we've had comedians on. Our friend Dave Hodge actually didn't want to do a podcast until he was on our show. He did our show and he was like, "I want to do a podcast," and he's been doing a podcast for 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah.
That's
really
awesome.
Cool, yeah.
That's great.
Yes. I want to ask you too, Kev.
Sure.
I saw you do a monthly beer meetup called Nerds Night Out.
Yeah. Yeah.
How long have you been doing that for?
Since 9 years, 10 years, something like that.
Cool.
It's 2009. Yeah. Okay. So almost 10 years. The crazy thing, a buddy and I, there's all these networking events in town and in most cities, right? And we were like, I don't want to go to a networking event after work where you have to sit through a presentation by somebody that's really smart, and it's probably pretty good to some people in the audience, but it's over the heads of some people.
I was wondering that. Yes.
It might not be applicable to what I do day to day, so it's cool, but nobody was doing something where you literally just book a table and people show up, have some drinks, have some dinner at a bar, and talk about whatever, from shop to whatever's trending in the media to video games to whatever, right? It didn't really matter. Yes. And everybody was welcome. It didn't really matter if you were brand new in the industry, if you've been around for decades and kind of everywhere in between. And, I met a lot of really good local people that have become friends with. We've gotten each other jobs. We've done projects together. We're friends, that kind of thing, right? So him and I, Jared's his name, Jared and I were just like, let's just do this. And him and I both worked downtown. I actually worked across the street from the bar that we originally did it at. It doesn't exist anymore, but we just, would head there once a month, and the days kind of change. We usually try to do Wednesday night, but right after work, and people stayed for anywhere from an hour to 3, 4, 5 hours. It was just kind of a fun time.
I love it, and it just makes you sound just like a regular guy. Yep. I love that. That was one thing doing the guest prep. I was like, that's amazing. You just, people have, I think, a wrong conception that, this person doesn't do regular things. Like, no, but you do. I love to see that. Cool.
Yeah. Well, it's the thing that I find interesting, and you guys probably experience this as well, is you talk to these people that have been wildly successful from money to status to whatever, and they're just regular people. And a lot of them are really willing to talk about the highs and lows and just be a regular person, right? And sometimes people are scared to approach them or ask them things, and you'd be surprised at how many times, like if you genuinely reach out to somebody with a question, a lot of people, no matter how successful they are, if it's good or they can help you, will genuinely help you, which I found really quite fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with even just like reaching out for guests, like the guy we had before you, Kev. Steve Coulter.
I was looking. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, same thing. Like, and I said, like, even just every now and then I'll get a message from him, just like, how's life? Like, it's great. It's great to have, to be able to form that kind of relationship with somebody you never would have the chance to outside of that. Like, it's great.
Totally.
Going back to what you said too, where you said like you and your friend had just said, okay, let's do this. So I find that so interesting because that's kind of how Rob and I started, where we were just like, hey, we want to do radio, let's do it.
Yeah.
There was nothing really more deeper than that. We were just like, we're going to do it, and we did it.
Yeah.
And eventually it became this. Like, we grew over time, but I had a guy recently who wanted to get into podcasting, and I told him, like, hey, check out my show. And then out of nowhere, he's just like, oh, I haven't had time to listen to your show because I've been listening to podcasts about how to make a podcast. And I'm like, no. I'm like, just do it. Just buy a mic. I can give you, like, we started with a, like, $45 Samsung Go mic that you hook onto a fucking laptop on the top of it, and it's good to go. And that's it. Just do it. You don't need to do all that research or anything. You've developed that over time.
To be 100% honest with you, I still use an $80 mic that I bought. I actually bought a second one because sometimes if I record in person, I use a little 2-track. But I literally, all the shows are done with an $80 mic, and I either use Zoom video, which I don't pay for because I don't really need to, or I use this $30 Skype plugin that I paid one time for to record shows.
I love that.
So
yes,
$110 is what I basically you could get into podcasting.
Yeah, honestly,
and then there's
you really
100.
can.
Who doesn't have extra $100 if you want to be somewhat serious about it, right?
Yeah, even if
you don't need to go spend thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's not just that, but this kid was like, yeah, so I understand that you got to learn how to talk, and podcasts are supposed to be 45 minutes. I'm like, no.
Oh, yeah, I heard that too.
No.
Yeah, we do it 3.5 hours. So,
What?
Yeah, I think the thing that I've come to realize in the last maybe couple years, even after I started doing a show, is it's so hard to comprehend. You just need to pick a day and start, and you'll figure it out. And it's going to be a pain. You're going to struggle. No matter how far you take it, you will struggle with something.
I was going to ask you that. Is there anything you still struggle with?
You guys probably have problems with your show. They're different than what you had when you were starting out.
Yeah.
They're just different, right?
They just come up.
As far as technology goes, there's like out of nowhere, like something has been working great for years, and then today it's not working that way anymore, and it's like, what?
Yeah,
exactly, right? Or there's some other thing on the side, like maybe you're trying to make more money from the show, and you obviously when you first started out, you probably weren't making any money from the show, and then now you have a big enough following, and you're like, well, how do I make money off the show? So it's like a different problem, right?
Yeah.
It's every day struggle.
Yeah.
Well,
right? Like we've talked about it off the show too. We have this one guy that was oh my God, he did like a 15-minute like silly podcast, and after a year he wasn't as big as Howard Stern, so he was gonna quit. He was no one's ever going to be that big. No one's ever going to be Howard Stern except for Howard Stern.
I'm so pissed off.
I think
Rob and I were into this for like a year in our old show, and I had noticed an old like high school buddy had started a YouTube channel, and he was on his second episode that was 30 minutes long, and he's like, why is nobody liking it? Why is nobody commenting it? I'm gonna quit if people don't start commenting on this. It's like, stop.
Yes.
Just stop.
Yeah.
Well, I honestly, and I read this somewhere, and I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts, that you need, before you start seeing any success, it's between 200 and 300 pieces of content that you created.
Yes.
So think about that. How long does it take you to create 200 to 300 pieces of content before you actually start developing a real audience?
That's at least 5 years, I would think. Like if you're doing it weekly.
Yeah.
Right.
Or like it could be a blog post though, right? It could be blogs. It could be a bunch of stuff. But
yes.
Like 200 pieces of content you're not going to do that overnight. You're not going to do that in months.
No.
It's going to take a year or longer.
It's
right?
kind of like
you're
on
probably
YouTube.
looking at 3 years.
Yeah, YouTube. It's pretty much you have to have 1,000 subscribers to be somewhat of a success on there. Like we're still not at that. Like I mean you could pay for it, but I'm not gonna have an audience that's not genuine. But like it's a hard, slow build.
It's also interesting looking at, like, Rob and I have interviewed a lot of comedians, and we had this guy John Peasian who he was on like America's Got Talent, and he's like good, he's doing well, but he's been doing it for 30 years, and he hasn't completely blown up. And he's even said, like, you gotta get lucky. Sometimes you just like you do a video and it blows up. Other times it doesn't, but you have to do it because you love doing it, and that's really
there's
I think
really no
what it comes
formula.
down to. You could be doing it for years and you may get successful, or not. You could be doing it for one day and you might blow up.
Totally.
Yeah,
I 100% agree.
Kevin, we have to wrap this up, dude. But it's been a blast talking to you. It's been great.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, man. I appreciate you guys having me on the show, and it's been really fun. And thanks, guys.
Thank you. Where can everybody find you?
You can go to buildingthefutureshow.com, or if you just Google like Kevin, Kevin, and Horek, you'll find a bunch of stuff, and people can check it out and reach out to me. I'm totally open to ask or answer questions about really anything. So.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Have a good one.
No problem. You too. Okay, bye.
Bye.
See ya.